here at DEFCON 26 speaking with Maggie Mayhem. Maggie, you just gave a talk on SESTA and FOSTA. Can you say a little bit more about what those are?
Yeah. So SESTA FOSTA is a set of legislation that was passed and signed into law in April of 2018, and it is the Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act and the Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act combined. What it does essentially is it eliminates Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, and it opens up liability of websites who host third-party content. It's been very vague, it's been broad, we haven't seen how it will be enforced yet, and people don't really know what its reaches will be. We don't know if it will include apps, it hasn't been defined, but so far anyone who has social media, message boards, or any form of communication online has been concerned, and we have seen over 150 documented tech actions of websites being taken down or otherwise censored.
So nobody has been prosecuted yet, and so everybody's just kind of pulling back early. What could we do in the meanwhile, or what are people doing meanwhile?
In the meantime, people are setting up new ways of getting communicated that can circumvent it. Assembly 4 is an organization of sex workers who set up Twitter, which is a sex worker Twitter. It's a Mastodon instance, and it has been a great form of communication for people to meet, converge, to talk about their rights, their safety, and their livelihoods, certainly. And we're seeing other people who might be migrating to other parts of the web, perhaps using Tor, and we're seeing greater embracing of encryption. Pretty much all at once, people started to move to using things like Proton Mail to protect communication and to educate everyone in the sex industry on different ways to try to avoid having their content stolen or taken down. Survivors Against SESTA is actually providing guides and information on what people can do to avoid losing their content. But in general, this was something that targeted websites rather than individual workers. So people are taking individual actions to see what might make their content stand out and be subject to increased scrutiny and learning to use different language. Some people are learning not to use text, they're learning to use images because you can put type into a picture and sometimes that's harder to pick up. People might be using photographs differently. We are seeing people move to different parts of Craigslist that they weren't usually at since we've lost the misconnections, we've lost the dating, the casual encounters, a whole bunch of Craigslist is gone. But we're seeing people pop up in different places and using new strategies.
That's very interesting. You had said also that people moved kind of from the streets and they adopted technology early and they kind of went inside as soon as it was available to them. You said a statistic too about how when Craigslist kind of was introduced, a huge percentage of people being killed went down. Can you talk a little bit about how that makes it safer and how SESTA and FOSTA FOSTA is coming down on that? Or
Absolutely. Yeah, we noticed all over that when the advent of the internet came about, people were moving indoors at a rapid pace. In San Francisco, they calculated the average number of street-based arrests, and in 3 years it fell by a full 50%. A study just came out this year that demonstrated that the female homicide rate dropped by 17.4%, which is a massive number. And that's because it's harder to negotiate on the street than it is online. When we talk online, we're able to check references, we're able to get more information from somebody, we can find out who they are, how they're representing themselves, but in particular it's been reference checking that helps people protect themselves. So if someone makes an inquiry into doing business, someone can say, I would like to know 2 other people that you've seen before, and I'm going to check with them and find out what you were like, and we can proceed from there. So although it may not always be safe to answer an email, maybe hackers will blow up your brain, it's happened before, but it's a lot safer to answer an email than it is to stick your head in a car window. And so getting inside allows someone to have more control of their circumstances and their context so they can protect themselves better.
You also showed some graphics of how to spot a sex worker or someone being trafficked. Can you talk about some of the problematic features of that image that we were looking at?
Absolutely. I was showing some images that came from the Department of Homeland Security, and there is a campaign they have about human trafficking. To its credit, it does say that trafficking occurs in other industries, but it is focusing very heavily on the sex industry, despite the fact that there is more trafficking that's found in domestic and agricultural industries than there is in the sex trade. Things that are problematic is the criteria they've given are incredibly vague. One thing that they mention is an excessive amount of technology, having too many computers or too many pagers, too many credit card swipers, things like that, which can be very vague. A lot of people travel with a lot of technology. We're here at DEFCON, and there's people who have many boxes of tech and all kinds of things that they're showing off and having fun with. One of the criteria literally was the smell of musk in a room, and there is no very good workable definition of what musk is or what would make it excessive. Other criteria like having too many sex toys or too many condoms in your room. Oftentimes we found that condoms have been used as evidence in the past in courts, and we're seeing them being used as a sign that maybe something like trafficking is occurring. So it disincentivizes people having protection in their room if it could be used against them. And in general, we're seeing that there's just more likely to be people going through your room and scrutinizing what's happening in it. People become suspicious if you have a do not disturb sign on your door, whereas many people just don't want to be disturbed, or they don't want to, they don't need cleaning services. It's often a mixed message that we're getting from hotels, because some places will give you a discount if you decline housekeeping, and yet you have the Department of Homeland Security who's saying that's suspicious. So those are at cross purposes with things. What I found most disturbing is that all of these campaigns advise people calling ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And I don't believe that ICE is a very good resource for anyone who has been trafficked. They are not a victims' rights center. They don't have social workers. We know that they're not treating people very well. So rather than this being about rescue, which is the language that people use, it really seems to be about incarceration and deportation.
So, of course, calling ICE is not going to be the best thing. You mentioned that social workers could do a better job, but, you know, for the kind of the layman who might feel someone maybe being trafficked or have some concerns, what would you recommend they do, maybe?
If you had someone that you were concerned, you can't necessarily make a decision for them. I would say looking at what we do for any intimate partner violence situation in general is probably a very good guideline. And we have a lot of people who have talked about how to reach out to someone if you're concerned that someone may be treating them badly or doing something against their will. And sometimes that could be as simple as introducing yourself and saying, "Hey, my name is Maggie. You know, I see you around, and sometimes I feel a little bit worried. I wanted to let you know that if you're in trouble, you can come to me and I can help you find a place to call, or I can help find a shelter where you can go." And you can just put that out there. A lot of times people just need to know that there's a friendly face who's not going to force them into decisions, because it can be hard to make that leap. It can be dangerous. People need to pick and choose their moments. They may not be able to be seen talking to you, and so someone may be very quiet. They may not accept contact right away, but if you're able to smile, if you're able to put a name to who you are, and people know you're there, it can make a difference, because you don't know when someone might knock on that door and say, "Can you make a phone call for me right now?"
Absolutely, that makes sense. Also, in your talk, you spoke a little bit about the difference between criminalization, decriminalization, and legalization. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you said there?
Yeah, a lot of times we think of legalization as being good and criminalization as being bad, but it's a little bit more complex than that. What we're seeing right now overall is a model of criminalization where it's illegal to buy sex, it's illegal to sell sex, everybody is going to get arrested. We're seeing a move into kind of a hybrid model, which is called the Nordic model, which criminalizes the purchase of sex but not the sale. But we do have some places in the world where the sex trade is legalized. For example, we're here in Nevada, and Nevada has a few counties where there is a brothel system. The trouble with the legalization is that anything that can be done legally can also be done illegally. And people like law enforcement communities are the ones who make the call on that, and they are not always the best arbiters of what that is. They're making decisions that are based in racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia. There are certain bodies that they find to be more volatile than others. It also creates an easy system for management to be in control rather than a worker. Legalization creates bosses that people work for, and there becomes very strict legal standards for what makes a brothel. So, for example, if two sex workers live in a house together, they could now be in what's described as a brothel, and it is unlicensed and therefore illegal. They would have to go to someone else who's already established and working with the government. It also means that your body standards are being dictated by the government, so you're being tested, perhaps at a government facility. Your information will be documented. So if you get pulled over for a traffic violation, it may come up on a computer that you work for a brothel as a legal prostitute, and that can obviously change the context of that stop or that arrest quite a bit. Decriminalization is when you take something off the criminal penal code. It just means it's not there, it's not regulated like that. And sometimes people feel a little bit frightened or intimidated. There's a sense that regulation is good and legal is good and we better have rules. But sex workers are the stakeholders of their own lives. There is no one who's more invested in their health or safety than they are. And absolutely people take measures to protect themselves. And decriminalization is our favored model because we will take those steps. We want to work together. We want to set our own standards for work. We just need to know that when we have a boundary, that we have people we can call who will protect it. One place we have seen this is New Zealand, which went to a decriminalization model in 2003. It's been very successful. It has been lauded by different UN agencies as the best place in the world to be in the sex trade.
Very cool. Do you have anything else you wanted to kind of add to the interview at all?
Yeah, I wanted to say that the Nordic model sounds really tempting. A lot of people really like it because it promises a very big thing that, don't worry, we're not going to target workers. We're just looking for those big bad Johns. We want to end demand for the sex trade. And in reality, it's not about stopping exploitation. It's not about providing resources. And there is no way to have any form of asymmetric enforcement of a law that does not infringe on the fundamental rights of the non-criminal party. That is to say, they are always going to compel the worker to cooperate and collaborate in prosecution of their client. This is not always done willingly. So even though someone may not be prosecuted for prostitution itself, they may have something else that's held over their head, such as the custody of their children or any other charges, such as drug charges or something else that people can work out. We've also found that it has become dangerous in places where the Swedish or the Nordic model has been implemented. People are in greater danger because they have to take measures to protect their clients rather than themselves. So their negotiations become a little bit more difficult. They're a little bit farther away, and yet they're still subject to great scrutiny and great bias by government officials.
Anybody wanting to learn a little bit more, someone watching the video kind of at home wasn't able to be here, do you have any resources you'd recommend them?
Absolutely. I think Survivors Against SESTA, if you enter that into Google, is a fantastic website that has been documenting the tech actions that have gone on with this legislation, along with resources for anyone from those who may be hosting third-party content, to those who may be in the sex trade, to those who may be looking to meet somebody or learn more. So that has been the greatest source of information. I also think that SWAP USA, the Sex Worker Outreach Project USA, is a national organizing branch for sex workers that has lots of resources and places to refer you. And your own city may have a chapter of SWAP. It may be a local chapter, and you should check them out because they'll know what's happening in terms of local actions or city or county things.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.